Whenever we are doing an instant gratification activity, let's say we are eating a bag of potato chips, or let's say that we are consuming chocolate, or let's say we are scrolling through social media, or we are talking to a group of friends in a social situation. In such situations, what actually happens is that we feel extremely good, we feel pleasure, we feel happy. The reason why this is happening is because there's a hormone called dopamine that's being released in our brains while we are going through these experiences. When we are eating a chocolate, we eat a chocolate, dopamine spikes up in our brain, which causes that feeling of pleasure within us, due to which the next day we want to eat the same thing over again too, just to get that hit of dopamine in our mind. So what exactly is dopamine? Dopamine is basically, in simpler terms, it's a feel-good hormone. It gives you that sense of pleasure whenever you're doing a certain activity. It doesn't have to be all negative, to be honest. In most cases, dopamine is the reason why you get motivated to do a certain thing. So from all of this, what we can understand is that our dopamine levels is like directly proportional to the happiness that we get from indulging in a certain activity. What this means is that if your dopamine levels are spiking up, that means that your happiness levels are increasing too. So now that you have understood this relationship between our dopamine levels and happiness, let's try to understand what exactly happens when we are consuming or doing an instant gratification activity and when we are doing a delayed gratification activity. So now what is instant gratification activity and what is delayed gratification activity? So instant gratification activities are activities which gives us pleasure in the moment. And that some examples are like scrolling through social media, eating a chocolate, or eating some type of a junk food or something. Let's say we're eating a very tasty, burger or something. Yeah, that's all instant gratification. And delayed gratification activities are the ones which do not give us pleasure in the moment, but it gives us pleasure at a certain point in the future. Let's say working out, it's extremely hard in the moment, but then 2-3 years later you get the results and it gives you pleasure, then extreme happiness. So now let's understand what actually happens between these two abstract concepts, like to our dopamine levels and our happiness levels, and the reason why we feel quite bad when we are doing something, instant gratification. When we're doing an instant gratification activity, once we're done, we just feel bad. At least I do. I don't know about you guys. I feel bad. But whenever I'm done with a delayed gratification activity, let's say I go and train football for a while, I don't do it anymore though, but if I do it, after training I feel extremely happy. I feel happy, genuinely. So now let's understand what happens. So let's take a graph. Let's try to understand this with the example of a graph. So what actually happens to our happiness levels and dopamine levels when we are doing an instant gratification activity? This will explain the whole set of emotions you feel. That is, while consuming you feel extreme amounts of happiness, and after consuming you feel drowsy, tired, lazy. This will explain everything. So now let's try to understand this, okay? Let's say you're scrolling through social media. Your dopamine levels strike up with every single post, with every single story that you're viewing. So this is the graph of your happiness and dopamine levels. You see a new post, increases. Another post increases. Another post increases. Now you keep your phone away. What happens is that scientifically it has been proven that as your dopamine levels increase, right, due to a certain activity, when you stop doing that activity, your dopamine levels decrease significantly beyond the level it actually began with. So it began with this baseline happiness level, and you consumed like 3-4 posts, or like let's say you were like 1 hour on social media. So your happiness increased up to this level, and once you're done with social media, you keep your phone away. According to science, it would decrease beyond the level it started with. So now you were extremely happy, but then you became extremely drowsy, tired, lazy, and you start feeling bad about yourself because you're done an instant gratification activity. If you're on a certain grind, if you're not on a grind, if you have no care for the world, then eating ice creams, eating junk and doing whatever would not make you feel bad. But if you're on a certain grind towards like fitness or something like that, you would know that eating a pizza is not good for you. But then you eat a pizza, you feel that an unnecessary high, you feel that high. And then after you're done with the pizza, regret hits. You feel bad. You're like, oh shit, I just ate a pizza, bro. Oh no, I'm just gonna gain unnecessary amount of calories. It's not good for me. It's gonna contribute to fats in my heart and stuff. And now what happens? Let's look at the addictive behavior this causes, this decrease in dopamine levels causes. You are here now. Next day, let's say you're consuming social media. Again, this is your baseline happiness with which you began, right? Only after you get beyond this point would you feel happy. Like this is a natural baseline happiness. But now your happiness levels have decreased beyond the natural baseline happiness. So now let's say you're consuming social media. You consume social media for 30 minutes. And it touched your baseline happiness. Beautiful. Until it touched your baseline happiness, you wouldn't even be feeling happy. You would just be mindlessly scrolling. It touched your baseline happiness. So after it touches your baseline happiness, what actually happens is that you would want to consume more. You have already consumed for 30 minutes. It's too much. Now you would consume for another hour or maybe another 2 hours. So that it could increase a little bit more. So that you could feel happy. And now you finally feel happy. Beautiful. It increased this much amount if you think about it. It increased this much amount. So how much is it going to decrease? It decreased up to this much amount. Now it decreased more. Next day you want to consume more. Maybe 2-3 hours more. Let's take a month into this whole thing. You're consuming social media more and more every single day. Your dopamine levels, everything being messed up. Too much dopamine, too much less dopamine. Too much dopamine, too much less dopamine. Everything is falling apart. What's happening now? You become addicted because now your levels are so decreased, right? So you would want to consume more and more to eventually reach that baseline happiness, and then again more to eventually spike up so that you could become more happy, and the cycle repeats. This much increase, more decrease. That's what happens every single time. That's the reason why we get so addicted to social media. That's the reason why we get so addicted to chocolates and other all junk food and stuff. And we just don't know this. It's not our fault at all. Nobody has taught this stuff in school or anywhere else. So we just don't. We are just not. We're just ignorant on all of the stuff that we are supposed to be knowing. This is the root cause for all of our addictions. Now let's try to understand what happens when you're doing a delayed gratification activity. Like let's say we are working out. Let's say we are training for a certain sport, which we know would bring the results like 5-6 years later, and at the moment it seems extremely discomforting. According to science, what happens is that when your dopamine levels at the moment decreases extremely due to doing a certain activity, after doing the activity it would increase the dopamine levels by a significant amount. That's what happens. So let's take working out. Obviously that's the most basic example we can all find of. I mean that's a good example. So let's say you're working out, this is your baseline happiness. You are a totally different person. You are not the person whose baseline happiness is decreased by a certain amount. So let's say you're a new person. This is your baseline happiness. So while you're working out, what actually happens is that, boom, you feel discomfort. You start questioning yourself, why did I even start working out? I would never stick to this for 1 year or something. And after you're done with the workout, boom, gratitude, good feeling. You would feel more motivated to now do other things as well. Like let's say you have to study. After working out, you would feel more motivation, more energy to study and stuff. And the next day, you're working out. This time, it would just not even touch your baseline happiness. So this means that you would feel extremely happy the next day while working out. And then more. You see how this is so different? When you were consuming an instant gratification activity, it increases and decreases by a certain amount. And that's a cycle which it causes, that it usually creates an addiction with that instant gratification activity. But then for a delayed gratification activity, it just creates a low and then it creates a high, and then low, again high, again low, again high. You see how this is so rewarding and stuff. This is the reason why it's called motivation. In the example for delayed gratification, we saw how dopamine levels and baseline happiness levels increased our motivation levels, whereas for the other one, it decreased our motivation levels. It's destroying our life. So this is the whole concept behind dopamine and the role it has to play in the activities that we do in our life. Let it be instant gratification or delayed gratification. This is the science of dopamine simplified. Thank you for watching. Bye.